Sewing Superstar, Nighttime Glamour. The stars come out at night for evening glamour on It's So Easy. Get ready for the red carpet with luxurious fabrics and special occasion looks. First up, Joanne Banko demonstrates tone-on-tone embroidery and serging for that 40s glamour. Then it's draping at its most glamorous and a satin bias cowl. Learn to create fabulous drape when you cut on the bias. Finally, Londa Rolfing has a quick lesson on creating a cascading front neckline. It's all today on It's So Easy. It
Hey, Joanne.
Hey, Angela. Happy Saturday.
Hey, brothers sewing, family and crafting, sewing, crafting, fishing. I have to add fishing in there. Joanne and I have a surprise for you today. We are actually live watching It So Easy with you. So many of you had asked for that, and we thought, you know what? Let's do that. So we have picked a handful of our favorite episodes. Well, there's too many to choose from, but we thought we'd come on live, watch the episode, maybe fill you in on what really happened behind the scenes, and answer your questions in between episodes. So welcome, everyone. Say hi. Joanne, how are you?
I'm good. It's too early for popcorn, but coffee and donuts would be nice right about now.
Oh, yeah. I've got my coffee, and actually, I'm just getting ready to go out for a jog, but I thought we would do this first, and then I'll go finish my usual Saturday routine. So, hey, Jenny.
It's so good to see everybody. This is wonderful.
I know, usually we're sitting there typing on our computers and watching everyone, and I thought this would be so much more fun.
Absolutely. This is great.
Like watching a movie with commentary. Yes, definitely. I think Susan called us Regis and Kathy.
We might start a new trend here. This is fun. These shows have been great, though.
Hasn't it been? So this was great because, you know, Brother has given us the opportunity to go live with everyone every single day, the end of March, all of April and May. This has been such a great couple months. Despite everything else, it was such a joy to be with everyone every day virtually and seeing what's going on. But I thought this would be fun for us to do this. Joanne and I thought this would be fun because we're getting ready to tape the next season of It So Easy in a couple weeks.
We sure are. We sure are. Things are getting crazy when we're all getting ready for those shows.
So the first episode that we chose for you guys, staying with season 16, which we started last week, is it really live at? Yes, we're really live. This is like we're live on Brother Facebook, and we're live on Brother YouTube, which we were surprised. We didn't give you a heads up on this. So the first this episode was getting ready for the red carpet. So I believe, Joanne, you're showing something on here with embroidery and serging for the 40s glamour.
Yeah,
and I'm just making comments on this. Yeah. And then I'll be draping a top, which I love draping. So this is one of my favorite. I was watching this. I got to go find that top. It'd be a perfect time to wear it.
I know where my dress is. I got it hanging up.
You do?
Yeah, sure do. Wait, where's that?
Well, are you guys ready to watch the episodes? Because we're going to watch with you, and then it will pause, take your questions, and keep rolling. All right. Where is It So Easy aired? Loretta, It's So Easy is aired on PBS, Create TV. It live streams on Amazon. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on our YouTube channels where we put our own private lessons or our private episodes. It's So Easy TV.com. Everywhere. And every Saturday here, right? All right, we're ready. Let's go. I'm going to bring this back up. And Joanne, see you in a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Possible in part by Brother International Corporation, a supplier of innovative sewing, embroidery, and crafting machines. Brother at your side. BrotherSews.com. Coats & Clark, MakeItCoats.com, QT Fabrics, QTFabrics.com, Dritz, Dritz.com, Shannon Fabrics, shannonfabrics.com, kaiscissors.com, 1605 Nighttime Glamour.
Hi, I'm Joanne Banko, author, designer, and online educator at letsgosew.com. Today I want to talk to you about creating a beautiful dress with embroidery added to
the all over or just the hem area. You're going to see both here. So when we talk about embroidery on dress weight fabrics, first of all, we want to be very careful to select a design that is light in weight. The design that I'm using, actually I'm wearing the same design, is from my book collection, and it was specifically digitized to stitch out really well on nice dress weight fabric. So if you're going to pick an alternative design, be sure you test that design. The next thing we need to do in order to prepare is to determine where we're going to put the placement. And you can see on this dress, I chose just a random all over, no real rhyme or reason. I just kept choosing the same pattern, rotating it, and basically positioned it as I went along. In this particular case, I did it before the dress was constructed. I drew, traced the pattern
on a piece of fabric, and then did all my embroidery before I cut it and before I stitched it. But a lot of times you're going to want to embroider maybe just in a hem area, like I came up with on my final option here. Just a nice little border treatment, tone-on-tone embroidery, which is one of my favorite techniques for creating a really glamorous kind of, star quality look. And that makes it really, really just understated, but very, very elegant. So in that case, I went along the hemline. I constructed the entire dress before I did the embroidery, but I still had to determine placement. So I like to do that with templates. I have embroidery software that gives me the option of printing templates, and then it's an easy method to simply lay it on the pattern, or if I was using my actual skirt piece, this would represent what I would be doing there. When I do that, I like to work from the center out because my center pattern is going to be really easy to place. My template has center markings, and then I'm able to space the rest evenly depending on the width of my hem. Let's talk about stabilizer. Stabilizer is one of those issues you could go on and on with, but there's something for every single project. And in this case, I used an iron-on temporary tearaway stabilizer, and it makes the fabric feel very firm and very crispy, almost paper-like really, and it is perfect for a design like this that's lightweight and soft. When I'm done, this all tears away and I'm left with that nice soft dress weight fabric. So what I'd like to show you, I'd like to go over to the machine and show you how you can design some different ways for your embroidery patterns. And what we've got here is a design, again, another design that I picked from my collection. This one is a multicolored design. I'm going to set the design, and then I'm going to go into the edit mode, and I'm going to choose the little color key. And what this gives me the ability to do is play with the colors. We've got something called color shuffle here. And when I select just random, I can pick colors that I want to use. I'm going to pick just a couple more here, and it will randomly shuffle all different colors. So if you're a little bit color challenged, or maybe you don't consider yourself an artist, this is a really easy way to see different color combinations that may well go with your fabric or with your color scheme. Another way to determine new colors and redesign a design with new colors is to select a fabric that has a pretty print that you like. And the artists are very good at putting these together. So you could select those colors and then pick a design and simply do test patterns where you're using different colors that mimic the colors that are in the fabric. That's just another way to design it. But I've got another option here, so I'm going to cancel this one out, and I'm going to go back, and this time I'm going to choose gradient, which is basically tone on tone. And if I pick a color, now I'm going to get gradient tones or tone on tone look from one color in many, many, many different options. And what this is doing is just shuffling around the colors and showing me a variety of different ways that I can do this. So I opted, after all that, for just a single color design. And I've got my fabric all hooped and stabilized. I've got my template on, and I've added a little snowman marker. What that allows me to do is precisely place my template on the fabric and not have to worry about hooping accurately. Now, if you don't have this option, then you're just going to very carefully measure and mark where the center of your design is, which, by the way, let me grab this little template from over here. If you don't have software to print a template, you can make a paper template in the same size. Just give yourself those same center markings and always start by marking your center and then working your way out. So I'm going to cancel this one out. I'm going to go back to the menu and I want to find this design, which I have transferred from the CD-ROM onto the USB. And it's this one right here. I'm going to touch Set. I'm going to touch Embroidery. And I did go ahead and test a few different colors. I determined I liked that really dark navy blue. When I touch Edit, I'm going to touch that little key that matches the marker here. And again, no matter how I hooped my fabric, when I scan this, it's going to automatically target the design right where the center is. So I can hoop it crooked and still stitch it straight. That's a really nice extra benefit. It found that. Now I've got that tape there. You can see it's going to allow me to simply pull this off. You want to be gentle. You don't want to distort your fabric. Say okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and lower the presser foot and start this stitching. While this is stitching, I want to talk to you a little bit. Let me stop 1 second and just lower that presser foot just a little bit. Just a little high there. And I want to show you some options for finishing the seam. So let's swing over to the serger. And traditionally, when you're serge finishing seams, you are probably going to consider using a 3-thread wide stitch. That's normal, that's standard, that's a seam that we use for knits. It's very commonly used. But if you have an option with your serger of using a 2-thread stitch, that is a great option to choose for dress weight fabrics. Take a look at how that's raveling. We want to get rid of those ravels, but we want to maintain that lightweight, soft feel of that fabric. So by using a 2-thread, we're using just the needle. It could be the right or the left. I'm using the left to give me a little wider stitch, and the looper only. And it actually uses a little converter tool that basically disengages the upper looper, and we're only using a needle and a lower looper. Now I'm going to skim this edge and trim off that raw edge. Okay, smooth that out. And if you take a look at this, you'll see that this is a very lightweight stitch with only 2 threads instead of 3. So I use this for my bottom hem. I actually used it even for all of my seams so that I could have a lightweight finish and press those seams open. It's a dressier garment. I want it to be a little prettier. So let's take a look at the embroidery here. You can see that it is starting to stitch, looking pretty gorgeous. We've got a few more minutes to go on here, but if you look at how nice and smooth that is, that's because of, again, the combination of a design that matches the fabric and a stabilizer that is lightweight. So that we may not get that finished. I do have one finished here. So let's go back over to the table and take a good look at this one. Again, it's a nice element design. You can see where I used a couple of different colors. That is really beautiful with that dark contrast on there. So consider making your own. Add some tone-on-tone embroidery or add some multicolored embroidery. Be sure to visit the website. We've got complete instructions for you so you can make your own gorgeous, glamorous embroidered dress.
To tell you, that was really cute.
Well, a lot of stuff packed in there, really. I mean, tip-wise, I hope everybody can catch everything. But, you know, we both try to build as much as we can into those shows because we know, you know, a lot of people are watching them from various stages, you know. Maybe you're just new to embroidery. Maybe you're intermediate. Maybe you're advanced. I think you can learn something from just about every show. So
something that people might not understand is that when we tape It's So Easy, we're allowed a certain amount of time. It's different than an online class or a virtual class where we can like kind of stretch it out a little bit, but we are timed. Like usually there's a 4-minute slot. Sometimes it's just a 2-minute slot.
yeah.
12 minutes and 14. And usually you and I have to fill in if somebody went short or long. So
Yep.
we a little more flexible. So that's what we're given. So one day somebody said to me, "You talk so fast." I said, "Oh, you try getting all that in 4 minutes."
I know, and you've got a thing in your ear, telling you when your time's up, and when your time's up, you are done.
You are done if you want to be or not. So, hey, Claudia had a good. What kind of stabilizer do you use for pashmina?
Well, I personally don't like to embroider directly on the pashmina if I can help it, because a lot of them pull really easily. So I prefer to do the embroidery on a band of fabric and then apply it. And when I do the bands, I usually use an iron-on tearaway so that it stabilizes it while I'm embroidering. But when I'm done, I can completely remove it, just like I did on that dress. Those designs are actually from my book, and they're pretty much all geared for the specific fabrics that I show in the book. And that particular one was the one actually on the cover. So that one was that beautiful scroll. And that's stitched out on a single layer of rayon batik. In the book, it's stitched out on a single layer of rayon challis in that show that you just watched. And I just used an iron-on tearaway. But it's the perfect marriage of embroidery design, stabilizer, and fabric. And we can stabilize fabric to accommodate bigger designs, heavier designs, but sometimes that gets tricky. So, it's kind of a long subject that we could go on about, but it really is. You need to make a good match, and it's always best to test. So,
Absolutely.
The least amount of stabilizer I can get away with on garments that need to drape and flow, the less stabilizer I'm going to use. If you're doing a denim jacket back, hey, you can put a good heavy stabilizer on there, and you got a sturdy canvas. But like I said, a lot of it really is a marriage of design, fabric, and stabilizer, and making that all mesh together. So
Katrina wants to know, can they order your book on your website, Joanne?
Yep, sure can. If you go to my website, letsgosew.com, you'll see a link right on the homepage.
Yep, and I'll put this up again. So, all right, let's see what's next. We'll be popping in. I think the next one I'm doing is draping, I think.
Nice. With that cowl neckline, with that beautiful cowl neckline.
And so
My
I have a cute
favorite.
story. So when I first made this, I don't know if it's this one, but a cowl, I made it way, 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 way too low. So I put it was for a whole onesie. It had pants and everything. Well, it was great, but I put a button here so I wouldn't be flashing everyone. That was not so cool. It takes about an hour to get to the bathroom when you have a whole onesie. The cowl has been revamped. So let's go see how that works. And thank you all for letting me know there was an echo. I got rid of it. I think I figured it out. So Judy says she loves your book.
Thank you, Judy.
I have a lot of stories. Some I can't share, but.
Yeah, we got some good stories behind the scenes, don't we?
Oh, yes. All right. See you in a minute, Joanne.
Okay.
Everybody in just a second.
Hi, Angela Wolf here, fashion designer and online instructor. Today I want to show you how to drape your own cowl neckline, regardless if it's a knit top, silk. You could also use the cowl in the back of the shirt, and here's a silk that's a little softer that you could use for a blouse. This is very simple to do, and it's much easier if you drape it. So the options of fabrics, well, you have a lot, but here's an example. This is silk charmeuse, which I absolutely love. And look at the drape. So the key is you're going to drape this on the bias. So I'm going to use a different fabric for that, but let me just show you how this works. This is the straight of grain. So your bias is a 45-degree angle from that. If you're unsure where that is, you can always mark it. And you just take this up here. See how beautiful that drape is? So I'm going to use a different fabric here, and I'm going to give you a few more details on that. How low do you want that drape to go? So you could start, let's grab a little tape here. This is tape that you can use on a dress form. Here's my shoulder position. Let's just say you want your drape to go here. I can mark it on both sides. But ideally, once you're finished draping, you're just going to use one side for your pattern, just in case it's uneven a little bit. So this fabric is a little thicker. It's a satin, but it'll still offer a great drape. Here we go. I'm turning this at a 45-degree angle. If you're worried about cutting into your fabric, just use a muslin fabric, just like a lightweight cotton that's not very expensive. So I'm going to drape this down to where I want that cowl. Just pin into your dress form. See that right here? Beautiful. All right, we're gonna keep pinning now. This would make an absolute gorgeous dress. If you're wondering what size fabric you should start with, I started mine about 36 by 36 is a fine measurement, 36 inches by 36, or you can go a little bit more, just depends on your size and your dress form. Now remember, you're gonna have to get this top over your head, but because we're cutting it on the bias, it shouldn't be a problem. Bias stretches. All right, so I'm just gonna start pinning. I'm gonna start cutting, here on the side. So this is going to be my side seam. You need an armhole, right? I can feel on my dress form where that armhole is. I'm just cutting around. There's my shoulder seam. There's my armhole. It looks like I need to go over just a little bit more. If you're a little bit nervous when you first start this, just cut in little increments and then keep adding more. So we're almost there. I will thread mark that or use chalk. What about, where do you want the hem to go? Well, let's start cutting around the front and see. Don't worry, if you don't have a dress form, I'll show you what the pattern looks like when we're finished, but I'm just gonna keep cutting here. Around the side. Going around the armhole on the dress form. Ideally, you want the dress form to be padded out for whatever your size is. So if you have, I don't know, maybe you could throw a bra on there or some padding if you need some in the tummy area or anything like that. All right, we're just about finished. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? So I'm gonna check these shoulders. I'll take this off of the dress form, but I've already cut one out to help you out. So there's your drape. For the back piece, you would do the same thing. You can drape it on the bias or you can use a straight of grain. It's your choice. For those of you that don't have a dress form, or those of you that just finished, this was my piece. So all I did is I took my piece of fabric. This is what it would have looked like coming off of the dress form. Folded it in half. This one already has the facing on it. And all you want to do is trace that onto your pattern. So just pretend I just traced this. The pink sheet is the facing. This always seems to get everyone. What kind of facing do I have? Like even my neckline has a facing. If it's a knit, you can just serge the inside edges, but you really need it to be finished somewhat nicely on the inside. So here's the trick. Just gonna cut down. I've left this little room here just so you can see a little bit better. The pink piece is your facing, remember? So on this side, I'm just gonna fold that in half and pretend I have two of those pieces. When I fold this out, go down here about 5 or 6 inches. I'm just visually doing this, but you can measure. And you just wanna curve up to that shoulder seam, just like that. So that's your facing piece, regardless of what fabric you're using. So there's your pattern piece, cut it out. I'm gonna cut this one on the bias. I didn't think you needed to watch that, so I've already cut this out. Here is my pattern piece. This is my shoulder seam, and there's my facing. It matches this right here. So how on earth do you sew this? Well, it's really fast and easy. Again, this is a tank top. This is the back piece of your shirt. So you're going to pin with right sides together your shoulder seam right here. Okay, that's your back piece, that's your front. And then you can do this all in one step. The first thing I would do is take this edge here, run it through the serger to finish the edge. But if it doesn't fray, don't worry about it. One more thing before I do that. This is your back neckline. I cut these strips. This is bias, 2-inch wide. I usually finish the back with a piece of bias, and then I sew it into the shoulder. And I'll show you just that real quick, but first let me finish pinning this up here so you can see this. And then the front folds over the back, just like that. Now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and sew this, but if I pin this in place, I just want you to see what it looks like from a big area. So see that? There's your drape, and the inside of your neckline is finished. The other thing is, let me just lay this down. Once you have all that sewn, I will go ahead and true this area out. So I'll sew it first, but just to give you a visual. You want, this is the outside edge of your shoulder. You want that to be even. All right, so let's go to the sewing machine. Let me show you a few tips for down here. When you're sewing a slinky fabric, sometimes it can get a little challenging, but just sew slowly and use a stitch length of 2.5. That's usually easier. So this is the back piece. Give you a visual right here. See? All right. I'm just going to sew a little strip of this. This is the bias tape. Now, when you attach the bias tape to the neckline, I'm stretching it just a little bit and allowing the undergarment to ease. You'll see me do this a couple of times, or you have already seen me do this a couple of times on this season if it's so easy. I'm just going to do a little edge here just to show you. So there's from the right side, and I would press this under and fold it over. Just like that. Now I didn't press this, but I'll at least give you just a quick preview of this. So you're going to attach the bias tape all the way to the back neckline, but you can see what it looks like right here. I have this hanging over the edge here. You just cut that off to make it even. So this is the inside neckline. The next thing I'm going to do is show you what I did up there first. Find the right side here. Here we go. Here's the front. The front goes to the back, right at the center. So I already have the back neckline finished. I don't have to worry about doing anything there. Fold this over the corner, just like that. Okay, go back to the sewing machine. This edge here is the shoulder edge on the back that we're going to be cutting off. All right, go a little bit further. All right. So there's the front of our top with the cowl, and there's the back. Now let's go back and finish our armholes. This area here, because you draped it, it might not have matched up correctly or whatever. All you have to do, because it's a tank top, just trim. So this matches the front. So there's your armhole. The next thing that you'll do is just use bias tape to finish that armhole the same way that I showed you on that little brief area of the neckline, and you can sew your side seams down. And you're all finished. To hem, you have a lot of options, but let's see. The drape on this is going to be beautiful. You finish the back. What about the hemlines? Well, on this one, I just used a serger. It's a very lightweight fabric. 3-thread overlock. On the knit over there, I used a double cover stitch machine. That works fine. It really depends on your fabric. You could do a real narrow rolled hem. That would look great too. This one here is even different. I just cut off pieces on the bias. You have a lot of options on this. The big thing is the cowl and the facing. So regardless of what fabric you're using, just remember to finish your facing, tuck it in, and you're ready to go. And that's how simple it is to drape a cowl neckline.
Love it. I love it.
So I
love it.
it's so funny watching some of these older episodes. I remember in my ear, wrap it up, wrap it up. I was like, but I can't. And then, the other funny part is that when I watch that, I think I know where the camera is looking, but it's so quickly that you miss it. So I can understand definitely why I get emails sometimes. They're like, I didn't quite see that. Could you do it over?
Yep. Yep. That's a great technique though. I love the way you did, that the way you turned it and made that shoulder and neck facing go together all in one.
Yeah. And
That's
what's really
great.
funny is that pattern I've had on my computer forever. I didn't even put it out. It's all finished. So I guess I just learned something today. That was the Julia top. I actually told Susan Fisher I was going to name it after her, but I had already named it Julia after my sister Julie.
Oh my, that would make a beautiful dress too. All you'd have to do is lengthen it and that would be gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Would that be? I think so too. Yeah, you could use stretch velvet. That would be beautiful, Christina.
Oh, that would be fabulous.
I was laughing though when someone said that I'm too afraid to cut fabric like that. So when I used to do custom clothing, I would cut fabric like that on a person, and you could just see their face, and they're like, "Don't cut me."
Well, that's the real designer way to do it is to drape. I never learned that. I skipped that part of fashion school. I don't know. I just never learned to drape. But you're an expert at it. I love watching you drape.
I just learned trial and error. Trial and lots of error. All right. So I have another episode of the next one we're going to show is, let's see. I think let me just pull that up here.
Can I take a second to thank somebody?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
I want to thank Jenny for ordering a book. And you know what? I just got a new shipment. So I'm actually sitting here today getting them ready and they'll ship out on Monday. So thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it.
And also, you'll sign it for her, won't you?
Absolutely. Yep. And it'll be she'll get a spiral bound because I do all mine specially spiral bound, and then I autograph it and I'll ship it out to her. So
I actually spiral bound all my patterns too, but I've had a little problem during this shutdown that printing has been a little problem. So we've had to resort to not.
Yeah, I had some glitches too. My normal source quit doing it, and I had to find a second source. So, but we're all managing, right? We're all just making do.
We are managing. All right. So the next, Christy wants to show the back neck again. Well, I can bring that video up again, but what I could do is maybe during one of our next live shows, do that again where it's slower and we do it live. So
that'd be a great tutorial. Yeah.
Sharon wants to know a little bit more about your book, Joanne.
Okay, well, it is all about wraps and scarves. So there are 9 wraps and scarves included in the book. And no, you don't need a pattern. Everything's just cut by measurements. And then it includes a CD-ROM. I don't know if that's going to show up very good, but
oh yeah, we can see it.
A CD-ROM of embroidery designs in all formats. All you need is a 5x7 hoop to stitch them out, and you can actually preview everything on my website if you want to see. There's a little video on there, and then you can actually see all of the different wraps that are included in the book. It was published by Designs and Machine Embroidery. Of course, I used my brother machine for everything in there, but we did make it multi-format embroidery design, so it will work in different formats.
I'm putting your website. It's Let's Go Sew.
Let's Go Sew. Like I said, 5x7 hoop. I love wearing wraps. They're just, no matter where you go, it's nice to have something just a little extra to put on, and they look great. They dress up an outfit. They can be worn casually, and even in the South, everybody needs something to take that chill off. So
the restaurants, it's like the bittersweet. You go down there, and the restaurants are freezing. Yeah, I'm always ice cube.
Wherever you're at. Sometimes I put one on just when I'm sitting around the house, just to kind of cozy up and sit and read in a corner, read a book or something like that. But it's got a lot of tips in it, a lot of stabilizer tips, needles, threads, design ideas. So I tried to really make it where if you were, again, a new embroiderer, you would definitely be able to accomplish everything in the book. But if you were intermediate or advanced, you're going to learn some new things too. So
awesome. All right, so next up, I think I'm up here showing how to make a luxurious shimmy top. I can never say that,
Ooh.
but it's a cami is what it is. It's very cute. And this actually, I made these and there's no pattern. I mean, I just kind of pieced it together, so hopefully you can follow along. But I have been just living in these. Well, especially now because we're, home so much. But I think that's my next big thing is I'm going to do some luxurious pajamas. But this is, will get you started. So you ready?
Sounds good.
Everyone ready? I'm going to hit go. And you're welcome, Mary. We've had just as much fun hanging out with all of you. It's nice to see all of you, even though I feel like we're here in person. We're not, but it's close, as good as we're going to get right now.
Next best thing.
All right. So let me make sure I have this up. I think let's give it a go. Hold on.
Hi, I'm Angela Wolf, fashion designer and online instructor, and today we're sewing a chemise. Regardless if you start with a pattern, I'll give you tips for draping. This is such a simple style to make, and I'm going to show you some tips for sewing the lace and the bust area. So to get started, choosing your fabric. Satin fabric can be really slinky, but there are a lot of different kinds. This is a satin that doesn't have as much shine as the other piece. And this one is actually a sheer polyester. All three of these fabrics would be great for this style. So they'll all sew the same too. As far as lace, you have a few different options. There's stretch lace like you would use for lingerie. Here's another one. You just want to be careful of if you can see through it and what kind of look you want for this. Here's another stretch lace. So for the design that I'm working on here, I've chosen a lace that has just a side finish, just looks great on both sides. You can see through it. It does not stretch. And then for the hem, I chose something that's a little bit longer. Again, it doesn't stretch. Just make sure you can machine wash these because I'm assuming you're going to throw this in the wash. So wash and dry your fabric before you get started. I altered a pattern. So for those of you that love to alter patterns, I'm going to give you a few tips on that. Otherwise, just go buy a pattern. So I started with a sheath dress here. This is the back. I made myself a seam where I wanted the back to go. And all I did was I closed this dart here. You'll see why shortly. Now, here's the trick. If you cut the fabric on the straight of grain where the fabric does not stretch at all, you skip this part. All you have to do is cut off the bottom of your dress. And you would leave that dart open, otherwise you can't get the dress. You're not gonna be able to get this on. I'll get more into that in a minute. Here's the front. So you have to imagine this started as a sheath. All I did was cut off the side where the armhole is. I closed this dart. This is the bust dart and opened it here. On the bottom, I closed the dart. Again, if you're not cutting the fabric on the bias for the skirt, skip that part. So I'm going to take this to the dress form so you can follow. For those of you that want to learn pattern alterations, you can imagine this was the sheath dress. This would have been the center front here. The pink paper is what I've added. So this section here resembles this section here. Now that's a lot of fabric right here. Will you gather it? You've actually made your own dart. So if that confuses you, go buy a pattern and then let's start sewing. I'll give you tips for that. So the first thing I want to do, this fabric here, I talked about cutting on the grain line and not cutting on the grain line. I actually turned my piece of fabric and cut this area here on the straight of grain. See how it doesn't stretch? So I altered my pattern just a little bit. So this is how I cut that out. Then I'm going to sew the lace on, which is right here. And if you look closely, I can see the bottom edge of this. I've already serged the edge. Satin can be so messy. So I first go through and serge the edges, and then we attach the lace. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll go back to the mannequin and pin this in place. So when you go to the machine, because I cut this on the straight of grain, it's not going to stretch out. And if you cut it on the bias, it would have like this little wonky thing. It's going to be perfectly straight. So just use a straight stitch, place your lace on top. It's your choice how far you want this over, but you really want it to maybe hide that serged edge. Now I used a contrasting fabric here, the blue and the black, so you could see a little bit better, but on the black, you can't notice this bottom part at all. So it's really your choice. I'm going to leave a little excess off because I can trim that later. And you have a choice. You can use a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch. This edge is pretty straight, so I'm just going to use a straight stitch and set it at a stitch length of about 3.5. If you have a real delicate lace, you'll want to go to a 2.5 stitch. And I'm just going to line this up where it just covers up that serged edge. Stitch down the side. This is pretty simple. The fabric should not stretch out on you because it's cut on the straight grain. If you get confused about grain line, it's really simple. From selvage to selvage is one grain line, and going right next to the selvage is another grain line. The bias is a 45-degree angle from that. Okay, so that's the first section. Looks really nice. Now it's still, there's a lot of room right here, so I really like to put one more row of stitches down right next to that serged edge. If for some reason your lace has a lot of ins and outs, you just follow along and stitch. You're just trying to keep it in place so it doesn't pop out on you. And then when I'm finished with this section, while you're here, you might as well add the basting stitch. So the basting stitch, this is the bottom of the top. If you can imagine, I have a little notch here to show where the center front is going to meet. And what I'm going to do is change now. Let's see, put this down. I'm going to do a straight stitch, back stitch, and then change it to a basting stitch, which is a stitch length of 5.0 or more, and baste along this entire bottom area. Get the rest of that lace out of here. And baste all the way to the end, and do not cut this part with your automatic cutter. Lift up and give yourself a little bit of a thread tail. Now I used 2 different colors of thread here. The bottom one is cream, so when I go up here and gather this together, you'll see what I'm doing. First, I'm just going to get rid of some of that excess lace. So you can see this is what we have so far. Is it resembling a little bit of a top? You could also add lace down this edge. I chose to add a bias binding, whatever you prefer, your choice. I'm just going to gather this together. I'm pulling the bobbin thread. This makes it a lot easier. And let's put this on the dress form. I have a notch where my center front is supposed to go, which is right here. And I want to make sure that lines up with my center front. If you don't have a dress form, you can do this on the pattern. I'm just going to pin this in place so you can kind of see what this looks like. So all the gathering needs to go in this area here. That's where your bust dart needs to be. This lady's a little bit flatter than the pattern I made, but I think you're getting the idea. So I'm going to attach the other side and show you how to sew this on. But the next thing I want to mention is, do you see this skirt right here? This skirt was cut on the straight of grain, meaning that when you go to put this over your head, if I can pull out the right pin here, this does not stretch, okay? That's the one we'll go ahead and attach this to for now. But just to show you the difference, it still hangs nice, but it does not stretch. This one here was cut on the bias. Now you can go ahead and sew your skirt together. You just have 2 side seams and a center back seam. This one, look at how this stretches a little bit so you can get it over your head. That's always important. And the drape is a little bit different. So really fun. So those are your 2 options. I'm going to go ahead and use this piece here. It'll be easier for you to watch. Whoops, slippery little fabric. Take this off of here and put this on the pattern so you can see it. We're going to gather this side here. So again, that's just a basting stitch to hold that together. The next thing I'm going to do is go to the front, find my notches. There's my center notch, and there's my center notch. Those need to match up. Turn my skirt inside out. if you can see this okay. Trying to figure out which angle would be the best for you to watch. Locate the center front of your skirt, which is right here, and pin that in place with the center front that you have marked on your top. And again, the rest you're just going to gather. This part will end up at the side seam. Gather in place and gather. And just ease those gathers in so they're somewhat even. There's no golden rule on that. And then here's the other side. Start at the side. This fabric can be very slinky, so don't get discouraged if it keeps moving all over on you. When you get to the sewing machine, you'll calm it down. All right. And again, the back side, both of the tops cross over just a little bit, depending on your pattern. I'm sure yours probably will too. And let's go to the sewing machine. We're just going to stitch along that waist area. We've got right sides of the fabric together starting at the side seam. If you're a little bit nervous of how this is going to look, go ahead and use a basting stitch first. That's always a safe thing because if you screw up, you can just rip it out real easy. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch. Now what I'm doing is, you see all my gathers underneath here? I'm allowing that fabric to gather. So don't let it stretch out while you're sewing. You want those gathers there. That's your bust start. And all the way through to the other side. All right, let's see what we have. Let's go back here. Turn this right side out. So what I have here is the gathered area for the bust. If I had put lace here, that would have been finished. But instead, I'll show you on my blacktop what I did. Here, all you're gonna do is add a little bit of elastic. Just a thin elastic is fine. You just stitch that in place, which will gather it to your waist. You can get it over your head. And then the last thing is these are straps. You can cut them on the bias. That's usually what works the best. I turn these around into loops, and I'm going to attach little loops like this to the side. So I'd attach one there, one here, and one here, and then you'll tie that. So let me just show you the back of this one. Super fast, super easy. This is all bias. If you want to learn how to do the adjustable straps, follow along. That shows up later in the season. So that's how easy it is to sew a satin chemise.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
That was such a fun top, but I'm laughing watching this because when the fabric kept sliding, we had to cut once because I kept saying slippery little sucker. She's like, you can't say that. I go, but it is. That fabric is so slippery. So I did see a comment here, Sharon. So usually when I'm using fabric like this, if I use pins, I'm using silk pins, which usually do not leave a mark in your fabric. Usually you always want to test. And I also usually only pin within the seam allowance. Now this is live on set and all they had was quilting pins that day. So they look enormous. On a normal day, I wouldn't use those at all. I would only use silk pins. So just to make that clear, because yeah, you don't want holes in your outfit. So do you need a roller foot or a walking foot for satin fabric? I don't usually use that. How about you, Joanne?
Not normally, no. But you know what? If I'm doing just straight seams, I really like to use a straight stitch foot and a straight stitch plate. If you can have both of those, it's great. If you can just do the straight stitch foot, it's better than nothing. Obviously, make sure your needle's in the center position and it stays there. But that really helps because the whole thing with that kind of fabric is it's easily pushed into the throat plate. It's not so much the feeding. The feeding really isn't difficult, but it's that little bit of smushing into the throat plate because the throat plate's so wide. We get the big opening for decorative stitches, and using that straight stitch foot, the needle just has one little spot to go in, and it keeps everything really taut. So that's what I like to do.
definitely put your needle in the center position. If you watched me yesterday, I kind of forgot that.
It's one of the really cool things about the Luminaire is you can, the Brother Luminaire, you just pop the lever, and I've never seen anything so easy to, to change, because usually you got to get the screwdriver, but it's worth it because you're usually doing a lot of seams all at once. So even if you have to use your screwdriver and change it that way, definitely, straight stitch throat plates are available for a lot of different Brother models. So check it with your Brother dealer and see what they have for you.
The size needle I use for when I'm using fabric like that, the poly or the satin, I usually use I usually use a number 12 for everything, but I usually use a 10 when it comes to something smaller like that, a 10 or 11.
You know what? If I could throw in one more tip, if you can't get a straight stitch foot or plate, use your needle on the far left, because when it's on the far left, the needle is closest to the throat plate, and you have more support from the back, the front, and the side. So that's a good substitute.
Oh, that's a great tip. Do you ever start your fabric to make it more manageable? Janet, I do not. Usually, I use my hands to hold the fabric and manage it that way. But you, Joanne?
You know what? I like to starch jersey knits, believe it or not. Sometimes, especially when I'm cutting it out, I'll starch the selvage edge because it curls. And if you starch it and press it, it makes it stay a lot nicer and flatter, so that while you're cutting out your pattern, you're measuring from the selvage edge to get your grain line right. Because you know as well as I do, you need good grain line on knits as well as wovens, or they'll get skewed, especially once they're washed a few times. We've all had that proverbial T-shirt that we bought that didn't have straight grain, and all of a sudden it went. Or a pair of you bought cheap jeans. Did anybody ever buy cheap jeans and have that leg just start turning on you? It's like it does it, like every wash, it does it a little bit more. So that's one of the great things about making your own. You can make sure everything's right on grain.
That's true. Actually, I bought an expensive pair of jeans and the leg was twisting like that.
Well, they're stacking it how high when they're cutting it. So things can get shifted. And they're not going to notice it when they're putting it together. And it really doesn't show up until you wash it a few times, which is weird and crazy. But it's like the fabric, just wants to get back to where it was, and it starts moving.
All right, Joanne, I think I've got an episode of yours that's one of my favorites coming up, episode 1611. And it looks like you have a knit cover-up that doubles as a dress.
Oh, yeah. I wore that on the cruise that I went on last fall.
Oh, really?
Because it was nice enough to use as a swimsuit cover-up, but it was nice enough for dinner too. You just dress it up a little bit. So that's a fun piece. Got a lot of use out of the Brother cover stitch machine on that one.
I'm going to see if I can get this up for you. We don't need to go through all the commercials again. Save you guys a little bit of time. So, by the way, I hope you guys are enjoying this. You can ask Joanne and I questions afterwards. We're going to keep just going in and out while you guys are watching. I'm cleaning my studio today.
And I'm getting books ready to ship. I got this shipment just in yesterday, so they literally were sitting here on the table right next to me, and that was my plan for today. So
that's perfect. That's after I clean, I'm doing shipping as well. My husband left a bunch of boxes back there. He said, you have to sign all those. Okay, I'm on it. But this is really fun watching with everybody. So, all right, Joanne, I can't wait to see this. I'm just going to bring, hey, Loretta, the difference between a cover stitch and a serger. We'll talk about it right after she shows this show because it might help you out a little bit. Yep. There is definitely a difference, though. All right, let's bring this up.
Poolside Glamour.
Hi, I'm Joanne Banko, author, designer, and online educator at letsgosew.com. I want to show you today a dress, doubles as a swimsuit cover-up, so you can wear this just about anywhere. It is trimmed with stitches that are very special. We stitched this from a cover hem machine. So I'm going to tell you all about that and give you all the tips and tricks for that. First of all, let me talk a little bit about the pattern. Every great garment starts with a pattern. With something like this, if you're going to add decoration, either through the cover hem stitching or through trims, I'll talk about that just a little bit in a minute, you want to pretty much pick something that's relatively plain to start with because you want the decoration to really shine. And if you have too many details on your garment, too many seams, too many, pieces and parts to it, it's going to make it more difficult to place those trims. So start with something simple. I selected a pattern, just a pullover with cut-on sleeves. Makes it really easy to construct once you've done the decorative stitching. But this particular pattern was designed for woven fabrics. Maybe you've come across that from time to time where you want to use a knit for a woven or a woven for a knit. And there are times when you can make some changes, particularly if it's a loose fitting garment. And this one is, so it's got a lot of extra ease in it. So if we make it from a knit, we might want to size it down, just maybe one size. That'll make it just with a little bit more of a trim fit. If you know you're going to wear it completely as a swimsuit cover up, then go ahead and make a little bit larger size. But why get stuck with a t-shirt when you make something really dressier like this? So let's talk a little bit about trim. Now, when I show you the cover hem technique, it really mimics trim. But if you don't have that option, you can certainly purchase trims to match. You can even consider using decorative stitches on your sewing machine. Just be sure you test them out with knits. Sometimes you need to add some extra stabilizer. There are some good options for that. We'll give you some tips for that in the download that goes along with the TV show. But when you pick trims, pick something that's lightweight and something that's going to be soft so it doesn't affect the drape of your knit. And above all, make sure it's washable. I've got mine marked here, circled. It is absolutely washable. I'm still going to check it for color fast because if you're adding a deep color to a lighter color like I did here, you want to make sure that trim doesn't, cause any ill effects on there. So make sure you do that. But that is certainly an option. The cover hem, that is a really, really unique machine. You're going to see me stitch on it in just a minute, but I've got some samples here to show you because cover hem machines generally come in two forms. Some cover hem machines just simply make the loops on one side and looks like a top stitch on the other. Then there are cover hem machines that have a top cover hem and a bottom cover hem. So it's very commonly seen in ready to wear in athletic clothes and leisure wear. It's a really, really great stitch. One of the beautiful things about it is the stretchability and the flexibility. So it's really great for those performance fabrics. Lots of stretch and a lot of decorative looking too. Normally it's used for top stitching hems and a variety of things like that. You could see I went a little bit outside the box and used it as a trim. So when you're thinking about a cover hem machine, you're gonna look at it almost like you do a serger. It's a dedicated machine set aside for doing special stitches. And with this stitch, it really is all about the stretchability and all about being able to top stitch to create that look. So how did I design my outfit? Again, a great garment always starts with the design. Well, I like to play around sometimes. So the first thing that I did was to play around with my design. I cut from pattern tracing cloth an exact duplicate of my skirt. And then I used a marker and I was kind of trying some little different diamond effect. And then I settled on a little bit of a different variation, which was this one right here. So let me pull this one out of the way and spread this out so that you can see it. So there you go. I decided to do a little bit of a star effect. And then on the bodice area, what I did is I trimmed the facing, which normally would be flipped to the inside and hidden, and flipped it to the outside. I'm going to show you that in just a minute too. So we want to mark for this. If we look at this particular sample, I'm going to flip it over and you're going to see that this is a cover hem that has cover hem on one side and triple stitch on the other side. So this is actually my wrong side and this is my right side. Why is that? Just because I chose it that way. You can make it either side you want to. But because my cover hem stitch with the loops forms from the bottom side of the machine, that meant that I needed to mark my fabric from the wrong side. So I did that. Just simply used a chalk marker. I love these chalk markers and a ruler. Just make sure you work from end to end and don't rub your fabric too hard because you don't want to stretch it out and distort it, but I'm just going to do just a simple little X here. Okay, so I've got that marked. And I like to mark everything all at once so I'm good to go and ready to sew when I get over to that machine. I got one extra one there. We'll just ignore that a little bit. Just darken that just a little bit. Okay, and let's switch over to the machine so I can show you this great stitch. You're going to notice, first of all, we've got multiple threads on here. This machine can be set up in a variety of different ways. I am maximizing the use of all 3 needles and then using 1 looper so that I have that loopy stitch on the bottom and a triple stitch that's forming on the top. But remember, I marked on the wrong side so that my loopy stitch is going to show up on then the right side of my fabric. Now you may be wondering, why do I have this little piece of fabric in here? Well, the cover hem can be pulled off and pulled free, but it really forms completely different from a sewing machine stitch. So I call this a joiner cloth, and I like to cut a piece of scrap fabric about the length of my presser foot so that you'll see once I feed this in, holding my foot control here, I'm able to simply get my fabric right under that foot so that as I stitch, I never go off of fabric. So it stays right on the fabric and I could follow right along that center line with my marking. I do have differential feed on this machine, so if my knit started to get a little bit ripply, I can alter that and counteract that. But when I get to the end of this, I'm going to go ahead and clip off that little joining piece, and I'm going to use it on the opposite end here to get me off of this. So I just simply lightly lift that presser foot, and there you go. So I've got a beautiful, beautiful loopy stitch, and I'm able to again get out of this and go right along and do that second line of stitching. So you're the designer, you're in control. You decide where and how you want to stitch that, and I think you might agree, this kind of gives a real look of almost a mock trim on the opposite side of the fabric. And then you maintain that stretch, you maintain the drape of your fabric. So we'll get just to the end of here. Okay, and I'm finished with that. So let's take a look at this. Remember, this is the stitch that you see very often in ready to wear, on sportswear, leisure wear, all of those great active wear garments. So this triple straight stitch is actually on the top side, but the loops, that beautiful cover hem stitch, is on the opposite side, which is what I used for my trim. So very neat, very stretchy, very beautiful stitch. This is what you find on those types of garments. So I've got a bodice here. Let me show you this. I went ahead and trimmed my facing piece with that same technique, just simply stitching from the wrong side. Normally, your facing would be sewn right sides together, flip to the inside, hidden on your garment. What I chose to do is use that as a design element. So after I did my decorative stitching, I simply sewed with my right side of my facing against the wrong side of my garment, stitched all around that neckline. Get that so that it looks just like you would see that normally stitched. And then what I did is I took that facing and flipped it to the right side. Of course, I do a little bit of clipping, a little bit of trimming, a little bit of pressing to make that nice and neat, but I think you get the picture and you see how that's turned. And then I simply used a straight stitch on my machine. I stitched right through the center of that cover hem stitch, right through those loops, and anchored that facing down so it was nice and smooth and flat, and turned that into a design element. All right, let's look at the dress again, and you see this dress has pockets, which really, really elevates it into something very, very wearable. But if you've ever done pockets on a knit, you may be aware that it could be just a little bit bulky. So here's a tip for you. Cut your pocket pieces from lining fabric and then add a little bit of strip of fabric. So that covers up the edge area, which is right here where we're going to see that. And then the lining part is hidden, but it's nice and thin and smooth. So how about that belt? Well, if you want a little more casual look, simply remove that belt. We've got that easy pull-on elastic waist. And that belt is a beautiful design in and of itself. So take a look at this. This is known as like an obi sash. And this can be worn a couple different ways. Tied in the back was fine, but it can also be wrapped around the front. And you see I've got that beautiful looping stitch on one side. I just simply put wrong sides together and stitched that and then trimmed it real close so that it's nice and even. So you've seen a variety of different design elements on this today, and visit the website. You'll find complete instructions. We'll show you step by step so that you can make your own beautiful dress.
That was super cute.
Well, I see a few comments. So one I have to. Kay said she kind of kept thinking that X marked the spot when she saw where that decorative stitching landed. And I have to tell you, it does kind of look like that. But when you wear it, number one, you're never wearing anything and just standing there still for everybody to look at you. I wore it and I felt fine wearing it. It's, you're walking and it's kind of flows and that kind of thing. But I did kind of think of that after I did that. But that's one of the fun things about playing on on the pattern transfer cloth. You can see what kind of designs you might like. So maybe I might do it different the next time.
This is a good question from Jenny. If she doesn't have a cover stitch machine, can you use designs on the sewing machine? Absolutely.
So, yeah, I did say you could use decorative stitches. I'm going to really recommend that you go to my website for a tip sheet that I have on sewing decorative stitches on knit fabrics. I can go, I can go find it later and link it into the comments. But it's you cannot do regular decorative stitching on regular knit without specifically stabilizing it. And I prefer to use a liquid stabilizer. So there's a couple of them out there. You can do research or you can read the little tip sheet that I have. But that really makes it possible to do decorative stitching on knits. I haven't found any other stabilizer that I really like doing decorative stitching on knits with other than the liquid, because the liquid makes it like paper, and then you're sewing like on paper. And yeah, a twin needle would work for that. Definitely. I've used a twin needle lots and lots and lots and lots of times on knits.
I love doing a twin needle with a decorative stitch, because that's even, you can use 2 different colors on there.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a great idea.
Here's one. When you use decorative thread on the serger, are you putting it in both or the lower? Are you putting it in one or both of the lower loopers? Oh,
well, personally, when I use decorative thread on a serger, it only ever goes in a looper, because the needles, there aren't any decorative serger style threads that will work in a needle that I know of. Most of the time, what you're doing is you're using a thicker thread, and so it needs the looper eye is bigger than the eye of a needle, so you need that. Now, in that case, I just used regular serger thread in every location.
I used embroidery thread every once in a while.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Really thin and light, but those thicker ones, that it just doesn't look as. And half the time, you can't see the needle thread anyways in the serger. Hardly.
That's true.
Well, for stitch you can't, not in the serger.
It kind of hides. It does kind of hide a little bit.
Yeah. Everyone's saying thanks. Great idea I love that idea about the pockets, by the way.
I've been doing pockets like that for a long time. It's just, I love side pockets. I hate to make a garment without them, but most of the time the fabric's just too bulky, and that's the solution, to be able to have it still look nice and neat from the outside, but feel good from the inside too.
Yeah. And the only other thing for knits, for some people think that they can't press knits, and I use an iron shoe, but I'll press up my hems and things on knits. I'll give it a good pressing, a little steam, and use my tailor's clapper, and that will make it so crisp. It runs through that cover stitch machine like no problem at all. No twisting, no turning, no nothing.
Yeah, you press. What's funny about knits is you press a lot while you're sewing them, but then they're so forgiving when you're done that you wash and dry and hang it up and it's ready to wear. So
right. And then the only other thing, I can't remember if we mentioned this or not, is that there is a double cover stitch machine now where you can, it looks decorative on both sides, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah. That actually, what I used the double cover hem machine there in the studio, but I didn't use the double cover hem option. I used, you know, just the loops on the one side. That's the Brother CV3550.
You always remember those, but I have to go look.
I know where it's sitting. It's sitting not far from me, so.
Oh gosh. All right, so we have one more episode if you guys are up for it, or we call it a day. What would you like? It's your option, or we could save it for another time. The next one that I found actually has, which we'll add the full episode later, because it has Louis Carney on there doing the scan and cut, which is amazing. So we might add that just as an extra video so you can watch, because we're cropping these out just so, because we're here talking to you. So we'll put these full episodes up for next week. Melissa, do it. Go for it. Those of you that are running out to go play outside because it's gorgeous out, you can come back and watch. And as you know, you can always go back to the Brother page and watch these. But let's play another one. So the next one is, oh, Judy, you just got an iron shoe. I told you, it's great.
Somebody asked about using decorative threads in both loopers, and the answer is yes. You can use it in one or the other. It all depends on the stitch that you're doing. The decorative thread, just think, where do you want the thread to be prominent and stand out? That's where you put the decorative thread. If you want it on both sides, depending on what you're doing, then you put it in both loopers.
Bye, Kay. All right, let me just bring this one up. I think we each have something on here. Let me just let's skip ahead. This one will be a great one for Louis. So we'll definitely post this full episode next week because it shows Louis doing an applique with the scan and cut, which is awesome. All right. I think you're doing curtains and I'm doing a cami. So I just have to tell you on this episode for my cami, I'll give you a little insight. If it looks like I'm sweating halfway through, it's because I am. Because we're live and I sewed the whole stinking thing backwards. And I'm like, I forgot to put the loop on. I had to rip it out and do it over. And it was this one when it was August. It's kind of hot in the studio. So I just remember
get hot there.
Dripping sweat. And I go, am I shiny? They're like, no. And I'm watching this back going, I'm not trusting them anymore.
That must have been the day that I was there and I came in. You came out of the studio into the green room and you said, you're going to wish you had shorts on today. It's hot in there. I remember that.
There's times that you can't see our feet that I'll actually take my shoes off and just wear flip-flops just to get, air. Because if that's what they do is they turn the air conditioning off while we're sleeping.
Yeah, because you can't have the noise in the background. So
Shirley, an iron shoe is something that goes under your iron. It attaches to it. I prefer the metal ones, and it protects your fabric. So if you've ever seen me on It's So Easy or any of my online classes or on my blog, pressing faux leather or something like that, you're thinking, wow, that's kind of scary. It protects your fabric. So it just works great. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Linda says there's too many interruptions at home. That's so funny. Oh, Fran, woolly nylon in the bottom of the loopers is great. That's what I've been using lately.
Yeah.
Oh, and Darlene's sewing her pair of leggings. I can't wait to see them. I saw that blue fabric she bought. So cute. All right, so let's I think I've got you right here. I'll see you guys. We'll be back for our last one. All right, bring this up. Hold on one second.
Banko, author, designer, and online educator at letsgosew.com. Today, I really want to show you how to make some luxurious drapes. Add a little bit of luxury to your home decor. You're going to be amazed at how easy these are. So I started with some faux suede. You could use any home decor fabric, but there's nothing quite as luxurious as the faux suede. It looks beautiful when it hangs. You see the subtle shading variations, and it's surprisingly easy to sew. So let me show you a few notions and give you a few tips on that to start with. First of all, you're going to hang your rod first. And I've got a complete formula for you that you'll be able to download from the website that tells you exactly how to measure, what to measure, and how to make your curtains come out really, really great. But you always want to make sure you use the same measuring tool throughout. So don't switch tools, because everyone could have just a little different variation on it, and then you might not get the same measurement at the end that you started with at the beginning. We're going to be using a special foot today that is really geared for handling fabrics like this, any kind of fabric that's got a little bit of bulk to it. But if you don't have that foot, I want you to know that a walking foot would be a substitute, but you want to have something that's going to just give you a little bit better feeding capability than your normal standard presser foot would. Glass head pins. When we sew, and I do a lot of garment sewing, but in home decor, sometimes we don't think about matching our pins to our fabric, but this fabric is very densely woven, so you want to use sharp pins. So I opt for glass head pins. You may also want to consider using clips. You're going to see me in a minute. I've got some of mine clipped together. Just makes it really easy, and you don't have to worry about pinholes. You want to also use a sharp needle. Now, I found the best success on working with this luxury faux suede is to use a super sharp Microtex needle. That needle is not only sharp, but it has a finer tip to it. So size 12 should be just perfect. I was able to sew through everything just fine. So we want to talk just for a second about the fabric again. The suede, just like regular suede, does have a one-way. So if we pet the fabric or we brush that nap, one way is going to be very, very smooth, and then the opposite direction, you're going to obviously see the nap change. I like to cut out my pieces with that nap running, with the smooth nap running upward. That gives you a darker look to the fabric when it's hanging. If you like the lighter look, that's fine too. But just remember, when you cut out all your panel pieces, to mark that, I like to use a little piece of painter's tape. So I'm obviously working with it on a very small scale today. The tab curtains that you see here, which they're back tab curtains, which means that that tab is hidden on the back. You see the back here and the front here. It gives a really smooth, sleek look from the front, and it's an ideal curtain when you want to be able to either tie it back or close it fully shut, and it has a little less fullness than, it only has 1.5 times fullness. Most draperies have a little bit more than that. So it's a little bit sleeker. Nice for contemporary, but it fits just about any home decor. So once we have, take a look at that, you're gonna see, again, that's about 1/3 the size of my actual panels in my dining room where these curtains live. So we're going to move over to the machine, and I'm going to show you all of the steps to make this. So we're going to start with a panel that has already been hemmed. And again, I'm going to give you all the measurements. You don't have to worry about remembering any of this. Very simple formula. But I like to use a double-turned 4-inch hem. So I've already hemmed this bottom piece. And then the next thing we're going to do is hem the sides. So I have a little trick for you today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, got the Move It digital dual feed foot already on the machine. That's the foot that has a belt feed. It's ideal for this kind of fabric. And I'm going to select a basting stitch. Now, why would I select a basting stitch? Well, I want to caution you on this fabric that it's not going to be a fabric that you're going to press like you would a normal cotton or a blended fabric. So normally I would press my hems before I stitch it. Watch this trick. I'm going to set it for basting. I am going to line up the edge of the fabric right along this edge of the throat plate here, and that's going to give me almost exactly 2 inches from the center needle. I'm going to move that needle over with the width key just a little bit. Lower the presser foot. Slide my foot control over here a little bit, and I am going to baste all along this side edge. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a fold line to follow. This is a great basting stitch because it's really long and really easy to remove at the end. And by moving that needle over just a little bit, what I did is I sewed just a scant distance from that two inches, so that when I smooth this out, this basting stitch is traditionally loose, I can do a double turned 1-inch hem without pressing that because I've got that stitch right there along the edge as my fold line. Once I'm done, I'll be able to simply remove that. So you can see I've got this one already finished, and you get my little tails here. Let me just show you how easy that would be to remove, and I've got a perfect turned double 1-inch hem. So I got my bottom hemmed, I've got my side hems on my little mini drape here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tabs, and I've determined how many I need, again, by that simple formula. And I have sewed my little tabs and turned them right side out so that I've got my seam in the center back. I have placed that against the right side of my drapery panel, and I've sandwiched those in between a facing piece. Again, I'll give you the measurements for the facing piece, but that's going to be flipped to the back side. So I've got all those layers together. Now I'm going to switch back to a regular stitch, and I'm going to line this up so that I can sew just a normal 1/2-inch seam allowance. I am going to increase my stitch length a little bit. Whenever you're working with, move that needle over so I get a 1/2 inch. And I like to use this little marker, this guideline here, and send my marker to where my 1/2 inch is. Once I've determined that, then I can send my needle over to match. I might need to scoot that over just a little bit. And that's a pretty close match. So now I'm able to stitch that all the way across the top. A 1/2 inch is just about right. And you can see from this foot, what the belt is doing is just keeping everything smooth. It is digitally controlled, which means if I'm getting a little bit of puckering on the top or on the bottom, I can make an adjustment for that. So my seams come out really, really nice and smooth and nice and even. Okay, so I've got that already stitched. And you can see my 1/2 inch there. When I flip that, I'm going to need to press that. So I told you want to be a little bit careful with this, but it doesn't mean you can't use a press cloth. Just make sure that you press whenever possible from the wrong side. And when you do press from the right side, press carefully and be sure to use that press cloth. So now I would press all that forward. I would flip that. Okay, and then I would simply anchor that down and top stitch that. And I have now got my tabs all finished on the back, so they're ready to slide on my curtain. So let's go back over here and take one more good look at the drapery panel here. You can see I also serge finished the edge of my tabs. If you don't have a serger, use an overcasting stitch. That'll be quite sufficient. You can use even just an ordinary zigzag. You basically want to just keep that from fraying and raveling. And then when I'm all finished with that, I'm going to just close up those little sides where that where my facing is. I've got a little opening there, and pick a gorgeous rod, slide that on, and you've got beautiful luxury drapes for your home decor. Be sure to visit the website because we've got complete instructions for you. All of the formula is there for you, easy to follow, and you'll have great results.
Hi, Angela Wolf here, fashion designer and online instructor. And today I want to show you how to take a simple tank top and turn it into a cami and maybe give you a little shape. So this started as a simple tank top. I took in the seams 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, depending on the stretch. And it just kind of keeps things in, if you know what I mean. So that's one example. And here's just a simple cami. The only difference is on my pattern, I just cut off the tank part and added stretch elastic. Really easy to do. Did the same thing on the back side, just cut across my pattern and then attach stretch elastic. And then I'm going to show you how to put these little things to make your straps higher and lower. So let's get started. What I have here, this is a polyester knit. It has a really good give, which means it'll hold you in and you can get it over your head. 2 important factors. And stretch elastic. The stretch, well, elastic all stretches. This is a fold over stretch elastic. It has a nice stretch. Both sides are finished. And you can attach it to the edge of your tank top. So there are different ways to attach this. I'm going to show you how to do it on a sewing machine with a zigzag stitch. But first, let me get my straps ready before I go to the sewing machine. There are little tools you can buy, similar to what you put in the lingerie section. So this is fold over elastic that I've just stitched in place. I'm just going to pin this into place. I'll be running a stitch right across here. And then I have this part. So try to follow. It's a little narrow area, but you go in and around. That's going to be your adjustment to make it higher and lower. I'm going to go through this ring. And this is the part that gets a little confusing. I'm going to go take this around that center section. So just try to follow along in this very narrow space. Go in through the center. Get this out of the way a little bit. You can see that sticking out, and now it's going to go back through the other side. Like that. So if you could follow, I'm going to sew this into place. I'll go ahead and put a pin there so I don't forget where it goes. It gets a little confusing. And then if you can imagine, this is the section now that will make it higher and lower. So I'm going to stitch across here, here. So let's go to the sewing machine. I'll give you a few tips for sewing in this stretch elastic. The first place I put the stretch elastic is across the center front, and then it went all the way around the outside body of the garment. I'm going to use just a narrow zigzag stitch set to a little bit longer length than the standard. You could also use a stretch thread. Then you don't need to use the zigzag stitch. So here is a tip if you're trying to get your elastic to stay in place. If you look closely on this elastic, there's a fold. You could just barely see that. So I'm just going to do a little area here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, this would be the right side of the garment, and this is laying underneath the back side. I'm just going to do a little zigzag stitch, and you want to stretch the elastic just a little bit. You're easing it to the front of the garment. You just don't want your garment to hang open. Just going to do a little bit here. So this is the right side of the garment. So the back side is already attached. I'm using a contrasting thread so you can see. And now, while I was stitching that, I just made sure that the fabric laid right inside of that area, right along that crease, because I can see it. You'll see it when you're sewing it. Go to here, fold it over. And now this is from the right side of the garment, and then you can check and make sure that your zigzag stitch is right on the edge of the elastic. See how nice that looks? And it stretches. So that's how you add the elastic. Now let's go back to this shirt here where I have just a couple of pins in place. I'm going to just stitch across here. Now, you also could use a little bit narrower of a zigzag stitch. I'm going to use the same so it matches the rest of my stitching on here. And I'm going to go back and forth. Again, using contrasting color on this. So I go back and forth. Now, if you're using the same color, it's going to blend in. And the other area you're going to do that is right here, if I can get this out of the way. You might find it easier to put your needle right in the center of that to keep it in place before you stitch. Go back and forth a couple of times. So you can see that is stitched. And now when I need to adjust my strap, I can make it higher or lower. Now this I would make a little bit neater. It should be touching, but I think you get the idea. So you would just attach elastic to the front all the way around and attach your straps, and you got a cami to wear under any sweater.
Every room of your home can have the star treatment with.
That was the episode that was like a take 2, take 3 for me because I could not get that thing wrapped.
You never know. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh my
and nobody would ever know once they watch it and they see it. It looks
Sounds
perfect.
So those drapes were gorgeous. Tell us a little bit about a few other tips you want to give for that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit funny. I know some people know my sewing story, but I actually started sewing in junior high, and I just love at first stitch. I mean, absolutely. Little did I know that it was going to become my lifetime career. I didn't know it at the time. I just knew I loved it, and I happened to have an opportunity when I was in. I was able to take more home economics classes all the way through high school. It was an elective, so I took it every single year. And when I was 11th grade, my teacher got a notice from it was kind of like an occupational thing that they had, and there was a custom drapery factory in the same town that I lived in that I had no idea of, that wanted to hire somebody, and she recommended me. So I started working there when I was 16, left school at noon, went right to work. I worked at that shop all the way through my fashion school years. While I was, taking fashion school classes, I still worked part-time, and they wanted me to stay there forever. I had a fabulous boss. He was wonderful, and he wanted to train me to do all the fancy work. At that time, we worked with decorators. So we did a lot of high-end work. We did a lot of high-end department store things. And he only had one person that did all the fancy drapes there. And by the way, she used a Brother machine. It was the only Brother machine in the whole place. It was an industrial machine. And he wanted me to train on that. And I'll never forget saying to him, I love working here. I love having you as my boss. But drapes would just bore me to tears if I had to do them the rest of my life. I want to do garments. So that's why I was going to fashion school. But my background actually started in draperies, and I had some great opportunities there. I got to use all the industrial machines there, learn how to work every single one of them, and see the whole process. So, it's funny how things kind of come back to you. And I think almost everybody would agree, you could make a sewing machine pay for itself if you just learn how to do home decor, especially for people that are, just starting out in homes or moving. You could save yourself an absolute fortune by making window treatments.
I had to buy pillowcases the other day that were just plain. Not the other day, but actually before we started the live thing, which is why the first week I did pillowcases, because now I made them. Yeah. It was outrageous how expensive they are. And if you know how to sew, you know that fabric only costs, even with the silk, might have been like $10.
I know. And home decor, if you've got any, young people in your life that are willing to learn how to sew, just teach them how to make pillows and curtains, and they're going to be set, for the rest of their life.
Did you see Sharon's comment? She said she had in sewing school, she made a skirt and vest and got an F on it because she forgot to take out the stay stitching. Sharon, my first outfit when I went to, I think I was 6 or 7, was a skirt and a vest, probably same kind of thing. And I still have the photo of that.
I still have the first thing I ever made. It was an apron. I was going to try to show it on our apron show, but I couldn't find it fast enough.
Oh, I wish I would have saved one of my first dresses. I did, where I had my sisters chalk me out, and I was like a crime scene. I that dress. I saved the Vogue magazine that it looked like, but I didn't save it.
That would be something. Yeah. But those drapes were that style is really nice. And if you want to do it out of regular home decor fabric, I've made that same style out of home decor fabric. It's wonderful. You don't want to use lining. If somebody might be wondering, like, why didn't I line them? If they're so luxurious, lining sticks to that suede backing. So ask me how I know. I bought lining because that's what my intention was, to show lined ones. And it just wouldn't work. So if you want to make something like that and still have the protection on the back, I would just put up a sheer curtain as a backing. But those are really easy to make from home decor fabric, and they're a nice style because they're very sleek. They don't really look like anything dated because that tab is on the back, and they're really easy to use. So easy to sew.
Very rich looking too. Easy to sew is a good one.
Yeah.
So Cami, what is the easiest way to size your straps so you don't have to use a slider? I usually pin, well, I usually have the slider, but if you don't, pin like right here to the front of your tank, and then just pin it to the back. Try it on, make sure it's comfortable. The only reason the slider is nice is as elastic stretches out, as we've talked about, like bathing suits through the years. My one bathing suit that I think the shoulders are this high now, I just keep sewing them and it stretches out. So that's the reason the slider is kind of nice. But if not, just pin it to the front and the back. And you could always, since you sew, if it stretches out by next year, you just rip it out and make them shorter. But that would be the only thing I could think of. And the hidden are fun. They're easy to do.
You know what I do? I recycle. If I have lingerie that's, you know, seen its day, I cut off all the fixtures on it and put them in my Notion bag.
It's funny you just said that because I'm cleaning today and just organizing. I have the front door open. Hopefully the mom and her 10 little baby squirrels don't come in. But so far we've made the whole show. They are so stinking cute.
Oh,
but
I can imagine.
Box of that. I cut off the backs of the bras, the straps, the even underwire. I save all that in a bin because if I need something like that, I have it right there.
It's the same as what you would buy, you know, if you had to special order it. So it's in handy.
What Christina wants to know what pattern that was. So that wasn't a pattern. So you can go back and watch the replay. I don't remember if I used my ruche tee or my Rachel tank top. I not that I wasn't watching, I was cleaning, but I used one or the other. Go back and watch, but you can use the pattern that you probably already have and turn it into a cami. But that's what I used. And
that fold over elastic really, really, really was beautiful on there.
Yeah. Here's a good question for you from Marnell. When you make curtains, do you double the width of the window for material?
You know, it all depends on that particular style of drape. You use 1 3/4 to 1 1/2 for the fullness, because I think that's Arnell's talking about the fullness. The lighter the fabric, the fuller the cut should be. So if you're doing like sheer drapes, normally I would do those at triple the width of the window. But the heavier fabrics, I think, look better if they're not so full. So
yeah, I agree. Well, this was really a fun. What episode is it? This last episode was 1612. Just so you know. So, and you go back and watch this replay just as soon as we're finished here, or share it to your timeline, and you can watch this what we did over again. And then next weekend I'll put up more of the season 16s because I won't be on here live with you. I don't know if you will be, Joanne, but we're not planning a live one. We just did this to surprise you because it was kind of the end of our quarantine everyday live shows. You'll still see us a few days a week, but just not every day. So
we're celebrating the end of May, right? End of May, beginning of June, and a little bit of things moving around and opening up and breaking out a little bit, right?
Absolutely. In fact, breaking out, I am getting ready to go for a jog. I got my studio clean while we were watching this, and I'm going to go for a run. And then I think my husband and I are taking the pontoon boat out on the river for the afternoon. How does that sound?
Good for you.
Joanne, what do you got going on?
I got some sewing to do, actually. I'm working on some brother blog projects that I want to wrap up so I can get started on some other things next week. So Saturday's sewing day, usually.
Nice. Well, everyone's saying thanks. It's great to see everyone. Joanne, it's so fun
wonderful
here. And we both are getting ready for our next taping of It's So Easy. So we'll be sure to share what we have going on in a couple weeks about that. So don't forget the champagne. Kelly, I won't forget the champagne. No worries on that. It's so great. And thanks, everyone. And be sure to thank Brother for allowing us to take over their page for the last 2 months. And we still have a lot more fun planned for you. So next week is Refashion Week. That's the theme.
It's been so much fun spending time with you, Angela, and everybody else here too. So thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you later.
Happy sewing.